to cut a figure out of a background in Photoshop. And I think this will be really helpful for all of you, not just in regards to our current project, but then also just for future creative applications. Right now I've got Elena's image up and I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps. And then there's also a handout on Canvas that you can also go through and work with as well. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm in Photoshop. I'm going to take a look at my background. I'm going to double click it because I'm going to unlock it. You'll notice that there's a lock right next to it, and I'll say okay. And now I've got kind of this free floating layer. I'm going to go through a couple different selection techniques, a couple different ways that you can do it. And then my next video, I'm going to show you how to place and work with it in InDesign. So for right now, there's tools that you're going to be working with, one of which is going to be the magic wand tool, and then the other one is going to be the quick selection tool. So we'll start with the magic wand tool, which sounds really super fancy. It's actually incredibly helpful. What the magic wand tool does is it takes a look at the values of your pixels when you click on them. So it looks at those values and it says, oh, I should pick other similar pixels. So right now I know I want to get rid of the background. So I'm going to click on the background. And that did a pretty good job. You'll notice that we're going to have some problematic areas where the shoes are going to be a bit of a problem. So we're going to go back in and work with the shoes. But you'll notice I've got these dancing ants, and it's showing me that I've selected everything in the background. Now, I'm going to do Command D. That's going to unselect it. If you do not have contiguous turned on, if you have that turned off, notice what happens when I click. Does everyone see how it has selected the values inside of the face? The reason that it's doing that is when you turn off contiguous, it's going to look at that color anywhere in the image. We don't want that to happen. We want all of our pixels to be touching each other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the background. And right now you'll notice that the tolerance is set to 32, which is a good beginning area. And so it's looking for 32 pixels around that original color that I picked. If I make that tolerance too high, it's going to pick everything. If I make it too low, it's going to take a long time to select things. You'll notice I've got a cluster of dancing ants right here, which is saying that it hasn't selected that area yet. So I'm just going to click in there, and you'll notice that my magic wand right now has a plus to it. So I'm going to add to that selection, and that looks really pretty good. I've got a couple little things down here, and I'm happy with that. So a really super fast and quick and easy way is to make your selection, and then I'm going to go up to Edit, and I'm going to go down to Clear, and there you go. Now I've got a problem with their legs, don't I? Um, so using the magic wand tool, that's one way that you can get rid of a background. I'm going to hit deselect. And then of course, if I wanted to add a color, if I go new layer, if I drag it behind my figure, and I'm just really quickly going to go to the paint bucket tool. And I'm just going to kind of drop in some color behind the figure. Oops, hold on. There we go. And you'll notice that this is not working so well in the sense that like I can see through my legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step back a little bit, back to my original version. And the next tool that we're going to look at is our quick selection tool, which is more like painting. So some of this, for those of you that like working with paintbrushes, this might work a little bit better. And you simply just click and kind of drag around. The legs are going to continue to cause me an issue because of they've got gaps in kind of the color. And you'll notice I'm actually missing a leg. So if you miss a leg, what you can do is use your bracket keys. I can make my brush bigger and I can make it smaller using the bracket keys. Now, instead of adding, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Option key. An Option key switches back to minus. So here, in this case, I want to actually take away from that selection. And that's, oops, you can see it kind of winged out a little bit right there. So I'm going to go back in and just clean that up a little bit. So I've got the two shoes. I know I'm going to have some issues in those legs, but if I look at the hands and the face, that looks pretty good. So I can use the quick selection tool. Now, the thing to remember with the quick selection tool is we can also go through and we can go edit, clear, and you'll notice once again that background is gone. And this one actually looks a little bit better in regards to that leg right there. This one, clearly the shoe is not attached anymore. So there's a way that we can go through and we can work it. Right now, you'll notice I cut out the background entirely. So if I wanted to bring that back, I can't. Where you see the checkerboard means that there's nothing there. So I'm going to take one more step backwards. And I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm going to use something called a layer mask. And the way layer masks work is they show you what's underneath of something. So I'll actually go ahead and make a fill layer, and I'll put it behind the figure so that you'll see what's going to happen. And actually, right just then was a fun little trick where you can actually work with that selection as a way to fill the color. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now, I want you to see what's going to happen. All right, so we can also use here, hold on. We can also use something called a layer mask. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to load that layer mask. Now, the layer mask is going to be located at the bottom of your layers, and I'll drag this out so you can see. Um, you need to make sure your layer is selected, and right here it's going to be the rectangle with the circle in it. If you hover over it, it says add layer mask. So I'm going to click on that, and that was not what I wanted to do, was it? So one thing you have to remember is once you've made your selection is to go up to select and say inverse. And you can also do Command Shift I, and that'll also invert it. So now I've just got that figure selected, and I'm just going to punch it right through. So you'll see here, this achieves the same thing, but with a really important aspect to it. If I select my image, everyone see how there's a white box around this side. If I select my layer mask, now this is a non-destructive paintable layer where I can bring elements back in. The thing to remember about a layer mask, and this is all written down in your handout, is that you're going to use black to take away and white to add. So what I want to do is I've actually taken away a little bit too much of that foot, and I want to actually just paint that back in and make it pretty easy. So I'm going to make sure I'm on my layer mask. I know it's my layer mask because it has the white line around it. I'm not on my image, I'm on my layer mask. I'm going to simply just choose a brush. You want your brush to be about the same size as what you're trying to paint in. And then you need to make sure over here that your foreground and background colors are black and white. This won't work if you don't do that. You can also reset your foreground and background colors just by clicking on this little button right here. And then we can also toggle back and forth. We can also use the X key to do the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint quote unquote with white, and I'm just going to paint the shoe back in. I'm going to say, oops, I didn't mean to do that. You can make your same thing I said before. You can use your bracket key, so you can make it a lot bigger. You can make it a lot smaller. You can make it a softer brush, a harder brush, depending on what you're doing. And oops, you can see right there, I accidentally clicked and didn't mean to add to that. I'm going to hit X, switch to black, and I'm just going to take that right back out. So now I can save, and I'm just going to save as a Photoshop document, mainly because I want to be able to go back in and edit it a little bit later. So I'm going to say save and say okay. And now I have an object with a transparent background. The next video, we're going to discuss how you can bring that into InDesign and how you can work with it.